Hey folks, welcome. I'm hoping that you can hear me okay. As you can see, I have a very temporary setup, and I'll be honest, these are just things that haven't been packed yet. I decided to do an impromptu live because I was kind of missing doing some tarot stuff. I haven't been doing much of it at all since we've been packing, and I haven't even read very many cards for myself, if I'm honest, especially with the surgery and stuff. So I was sitting here this evening thinking about one of the ways that I could spend some time with my tarot without picking up the cards and reading for myself, and also just looking online and seeing some of the tags that I had never joined in with. Now, this is not an old tag, but it came out a good few months back, and it's called #OneDeckGoneWild. It was a community creation as far as I'm aware of, and I think, if I'm correct in my assumption, that it was created on a tarot Discord, perhaps a community of tarot people. I don't know, I wasn't part of the creation of it, but a lot of people who I speak with, who I'm friends with, or who I follow, they participated in this tag on YouTube when it came out. So I figured I might as well jump in now, and that could be a fun way to, as I say, wind down. If I sound a bit breathless at points, just ignore me. It's something that I am struggling with at the moment since surgery. I've got to go see a cardiologist. It's a whole thing. But anyway, so this is OneDeckGoneWild, and as I say, I believe it was a community creation. Therefore, I don't really know who to attribute it to. I know that Meg of Rose Honey Ritual on YouTube was definitely involved in it, and I very recently went back and I watched the lovely Julie of Peekaboo Rose. She's also on YouTube, so I just watched hers, and yeah, I'm going to jump in. There was 37 questions in total, and the premise was you just picked and chose which questions that you wanted to utilise, and also that you honoured anything else that you kind of wanted to say about the deck, as far as I understand it. And it was really to focus on one deck, which I love, because there's a lot of times when videos focus on collections and things like that, and it's nice to get a little bit more into it with one particular deck. So the first question, and of course the question that I decided to keep in this out of the 37, because don't worry, I did not select all 37, is why did you pick this deck? So this is the Brady Tarot. I have these few cards out because they're some of the ones that I want to talk about, and then depending on how long this takes me, there are a couple more questions, so I have the rest of the deck at the ready. The Brady Tarot, the reason I chose it, firstly, it's one of my favourite decks of all time, which is one of the reasons that it is out, even though most of my deck collection, my altar, everything else is actually packed because we are moving next week. Like I said, these are just remnants. But also, one of the reasons I picked it is because it's out. I have 10 decks out. I actually did an Instagram video about why I had those 10 decks out. So if you want to check that, then yeah, have a watch. That should be somewhere in the Instagram videos quite recently. The second question that I picked was favourite set of minors, and I've cheated and I've gone with 2 sets of minors, but you have to excuse me because the cards that I pulled out in preparation are kind of a little all over the place. I've cheated on a few of them actually, but hey ho, I'm not worried. two sets of minors really stick out to me in this deck for different reasons. So the very obvious one in terms of like really just enjoying the representation of them, and also the keywords in particular, because when there is a keyword deck, whilst I don't always feel obliged to use the keyword or even go with that particular nuance of energy, it's quite present in this deck in particular. And I really love the sixes. Look, victory, this is the wands. Altruism, this is the pentacles. Passage, this is the swords. And then 6, this is the cups. And I don't know what it is about them, because actually happiness is kind of meh, but there's something about the whole selection of the representation, the colours for the particular card, how it fits into that energy, and just the representation of all of these I find particularly grip me and bring me into mind of the sixes. I really love the animal choices. The storytelling in this deck is fantastic, just full stop. So that's kind of a given, and I might repeat that throughout time. But yeah, there's something just so visceral about these. And okay, we do have arrows here. And we have like the drinking horns here. But nothing in these particular depictions feels too human. Mostly this feels like nature in action, maybe responding to our impact or our presence in humanity. But for the most part, just nature being nature, and representing this, at least through our lens, in the best way that it can. And I just love it. They really stand out to me as well as 4 very different coloured cards and 4 very separate energies. So I think that that's broke them up beautifully. But I also, the reason that I couldn't pick was I love the aces. And one of the reasons that I love the aces so much in this deck is because they've been given the same amount of attention and storytelling as the rest of the minors. That's not something that happens very often. I don't think anyway. I have a lot of decks that I've really loved over the years. Mystical Cats, I'm sure that's what it's called comes to mind. And the aces just, they're very elemental, but they kind of fall a bit flat for me. And I know that there's this layer to the aces where we're talking about sort of the raw element, and it's so kind of malleable at that point. Maybe it's, almost like conceptual before we've directed it, but I don't feel like that's a reason to not have presence and story in the depictions of them. And so often the aces really fall flat for me in decks. I'm just not into bland aces at all. They might look nice artistically, but usually they just, they kind of don't really evoke much in me. Whereas the Brady Tarot aces, they just say so much. They've got always at least 2 animals present in them. The elements feel quite obvious as well, but in that natural, not thrown down your throat, subtle, well, aside from the fire, which is very much in keeping with the wand's energy. And it's still caused by the lightning, and I love that it's the strike that's caused the fire. And also I really appreciate, again, in the theme of like giving them as much attention as the rest of the minors, they all got keywords still. So definitely my 2 favourite sets of aces. The next question I chose, which I need to find the card for, pardon me, is what card shifts your perspective? And I don't know I didn't know whether to pick what card fits your perspective or there was another prompt. Let me see if I can see it. My favourite representation of, and I think this is kind of, it really enhanced a perspective discussion that I was already toying with, and it's one of my favourite cards in terms of expressing that, it's quite a different expression of the Two of Pentacles for me. Although the word equilibrium possibly conjures like the balancing act that we see in a lot of, say, the Rider-Waite-Smith, or even in like the 𝗏 with the two discs and the infinity loop and the idea of that cyclical energy. I'm sure that's what it looks like anyway. Or I've remembered wrong. The word might conjure that, but there's something far greater in this particular Two of Pentacles. And for me, there's a reminder from nature that comfort isn't a promise. And so the concept of equilibrium isn't like, say, the movie. If anyone's seen the movie, then you'll know what I mean. It's a scary version of equilibrium. Also, I don't feel like equilibrium is meant to be in a permanent state, nor is it not meant to flux. And I feel like that this card speaks to that also. But I don't really consider equilibrium, one person's idea of perfection, unless we're looking at a spread or a question that's specifically asking, like, what is equilibrium for you right now in this moment? But in terms of a grander exploration of equilibrium and how it may be relevant in our everyday lives, this depiction of nature and the food chain, if you can't see the details, I'll bring it closer. So the fox has got a rabbit in its mouth, and then underneath the burrow you can see that one of the bunnies has baby bunnies. So some spring vibes. This food chain in full swing, it sort of reminds me of the sacrifices, whether they're self-chosen or whether they're just those ones that occur and it's kind of tough titties, basically. The ones that occur in order to like attain balance, perhaps elsewhere in our lives as well. It has like a kind of a community vibe to me beyond individuality, and physically it sort of brings me to mind of like, what we're told is good for our health versus the nuances per person, for example. So there's some things that would be really healthy for other people that I can't do because of my particular body circumstances. Or how, say, extremes don't create a harmonious balance, because it's not possible when we get into extremes. And actually in my Patreon at the moment, I've been talking to the group about what animals we root for in a hunt and why. Like, really encouraging people to explore the emotions and reasoning behind this for each of us, and not in a right or wrong way. Like, there's no right or wrong answers, but to really understand how we view the concepts of that. And I really feel like this card just embodies a lot of that in one go. So I absolutely love it. I think it is a good challenge to the perspective of equilibrium, and perhaps nature's equilibrium versus individual preferences or ideals. The next question is, I've said this about this deck before, and I kept it in because I knew it would be an easy and quick one to answer, but I have to let people know this is like one of my favourite decks of all time. So this is just a selfish answer, and it's something you would change about the deck, and literally the only thing is the cardstock. It is luscious rose petal, thick but somewhat bendable cardstock. It's gorgeous to touch. It feels very durable. It's nothing about that it's not a reflection of the quality. The only reason that I would change it is because it's very thick and heavy, and it causes my hands a lot of pain very quickly because I have pain conditions and other stuff that I contend with. And what I have found is when I have cardstock that is a lot bendier and quite a bit thinner, so like a linen cardstock for example, I tend to be able to shuffle it for longer and easier and just without pain. So it really is just a very much a preference thing. I think that this cardstock is still luxurious. Luxury definitely comes to mind with this. The next question is, what have I picked? Oh, okay. Which card would I hang in? And then it says what room of the house. So I chose, of course, I very much identify, especially as my time has shifted and moved on in more recent years, as someone who recognises deathcraft, or however you want to kind of name that. And I would definitely have this card as a huge picture on the wall in the witch room. Like, this to me is quite a honest and a beautiful and just a true representation of nature without ignoring the layers and the facets of that, you know. So there is growth, and we can see the plants, which I've forgotten what they are, apologies, growing out from the skull. And of course there's roots as well, so we know that the soil is, we can consider the soil fertile, I suppose. But it's not done it in that kind of wishy-washy way where it's like, oh, this is a rebirth card as well. And I'm not saying that's not a facet of it, but for me, rebirth is like the process that the caterpillar goes through to get to the butterfly. It's not comfortable, it's not easy, and it's not this spangly, sparkly, nice washed, you know, thing that just occurs. And so I feel like this depiction, and also we go back and we get to kind of like really prehistoric animals buried under here, and the richness of the process, and sort of a reminder, as much as I am absolutely petrified of my own death, and I will never lie about that. One of the reasons I ended up trying to work with death so much was because I have an unhealthy anxiety about my own. Like, no one wants to, but I have had a very difficult relationship with my mortality, in a very selfish way, of course, because I'm talking about my own especially, others as well. But there was something, even when I was really young, I was really aware of it. I had a very anxious disposition and very existential waves of dread, all the way back to like 5 years old, easily. And so the reminder of the inevitability of this in the way that it's depicted actually feels soft to me in parts. But like I said, not in that kind of nice washed way. So this is definitely something that I would have up in my witch room. I call it my witch room. I actually do my psychotherapy work from this room as well. So my clients do probably see stuff in the background. Hey-ho. But yeah, this is the card I would choose to have on my wall. And I could wax lyrically about that card for a very long time. In fact, because this is what's the word? Because this is portrait and not landscape, I don't know whether to save it and put it on YouTube after or not, because it's a bit rambly for YouTube. But Higher Project Refined Life is one of your favourite decks too. Awesome. It's so good. It's so good. I just love it. The next question is an interesting one. So if this deck could have one superpower, what would it be? I went really cheesy and possibly quite on the nose with this, but I don't care. This is meant to be fun after all. Shape-shifting came to mind, but so obviously we've got shape-shifting in our craft, and there are ways that you can do that, and you can journey with shape-shifting, and there's lots of various ways to express and connect with shape-shifting through like trance and meditation and other stuff. But I'm thinking like superpower, fantastical, you know, Disney magic, whatever you want to call it. I can't think of the other term I want for it, but yeah, fantastical magic. Shape-shifting as in, it would be you were able to turn from a human to an animal, which reminds me of a book series I read when I was a kid, but I don't remember the name. Each of them could shapeshift into an animal, and that feels like this would be its superpower, is like it would invite us into their world in a very real way, and we would each be able to shapeshift into a certain animal, and we would learn how they navigate the terrain and the elements, but also we would be able to, like, I don't know, commune with the animals as a part of that. So when we were in our shape-shifted form. Also, in terms of like superpower, if people are like, how is that useful? Well, firstly, it means you can be away from people and understand nature in a different way that comes away from like how focused we are on the intellect and observation in that kind of way. But also, if you needed to hide from someone, you know, sod invisibility, you just turn into an animal and like... Yeah, to me that is a superpower. So I don't know, you can let me know. It's possibly not a superpower, but I'm going to say it is. The next question I chose was, what card would be your pet? And I went on the nose with this one. It's an animal deck, and this card always reminds me of my cat, so that's why I picked it. But it's the visual. It does fit with the keyword, but the keyword isn't all-encompassing enough, which is anything. So the card that I chose is the Three of Wands, and that's Vantage, which, in fairness, my cat 𝗬𝗎, she is a high dweller. So if you're into cat behavioural stuff and you have an understanding of that, then various cats have different preferences to whether they like to be up high or low, especially when they're feeling like anxious and they want to get a vantage point, or if they're hunting. And again, with they're hunting, like some like to hunt things that tend to be on the floor, like rodents, and some much more like birds and stuff. Obviously, you're going to get cats that just do it all because they're awesome hunters, but you get the general gist. 𝗬𝗎 has 4 cat trees in total, you know, those big tall towers with the platforms and the scratching posts. She loves a vantage point. It definitely makes her feel safe, but also 𝗬𝗎 is a Bengal, so she has the rosette leopard spots, because part of the Bengal breeding comes from the Asian leopard cat. So whilst this isn't an Asian leopard cat, it just gives me 𝗬𝗎 vibes. It's like, this is the big cat equivalent of my cat. So instead of a tower, it's in this awesome tree instead. So yeah, just a silly fun one. The next question I chose is, if the deck had its own collection, what would it be? Now, I don't have this to show, unfortunately, but when I saw this question, I didn't think I would have an answer. And then one came to me shockingly quickly. So the one that I chose was actually the Animal-Wise Tarot, which is an out-of-print deck. They're very polar opposite. So this is an up-to-date, very obviously like a newer deck. You know, I know it's been around for a while now, but in the grand scheme of things, it hasn't. Animal-Wise came out, I don't know, 90s perhaps, I think. It's got the more garish borders, and, you know, the aesthetics of tarot tends to change decade to decade. So it's kind of obvious. It's a Ted Andrews deck. It's quite a soft representation of animals based on his keyword choices, although it is photography. But I feel like the Animal-Wise is like the soft buddy to the Brady Tarot. You know, the kind where the decks, they share the core values. So if they were people, like, they would share the core values as each other, the bits of life that really matter. But otherwise, the nuances and their tastes are like chalk and cheese. And it works, you know. With people, it's those times when you complement each other, both through balancing each other out and through challenging each other and calling each other on the bits where perhaps we're not so good. And it's one of our weaknesses is the other one's strengths, perhaps. That kind of vibe. If you are into sort of more pop TV programmes, as in like new popular ones, then think Wednesday Addams and, no, I've forgotten her name, for shame. I only rewatched it again recently. Wednesday shares a room with a very colourful girl who is werewolfy, but I can't remember what they're called. You can tell that, honestly, since I've had my surgery, especially because my body didn't take too well to being under the general anaesthetic, my memory has been atrocious. The recuperation is slow and long, people. Slow and long. I'm having to have a sip of water as well, because if I don't, then I will lose my voice. But just to show you my cup, this is not the best cup in the world. For my fellow Halloweeny people out there. So anyway, that's Enid. Thank you, Project Refined Life. Yes, Enid, that's it. It's an Enid. Enid is the animal wise and Wednesday is the Brady, and that's kind of their vibes for me. So that would be the Brady Tarot's favourite tarot deck. It would be Enid. They wouldn't want to admit it, but it would be. The next question, and we will get into some more cards, but the next question is, if the deck had its own collection, what would it collect? And this was another really like just instinctual, first thing that came to mind was rocks. And I mean everything from your average pebble until your mineral, but all naturally found. It just feels like a really to the core earthy nature deck. Like it would want to connect with the natural beauties beneath its feet. It would definitely be one of those people like myself actually who walks barefoot all the time. I'm always having to put all sorts on my feet to disinfect them after like I've cut it on something from walking barefoot. But I love it. The things beneath their feet, and also working with the rocks and their, minerals, whatever you want to call them, and their energetic stories from like years and years of residing in the earth, the elements shaping them along the way. Like this deck would definitely collect rocks. I'm certain. It would probably span out into other things, but yeah. And another, before we jump back into cards, was who would you gift a copy of the deck to if you could? And this was another very instinctive one. The reason that I chose this person is, even though I'm not sure that this is their art style, is because they are the person in my life that is the animal person as well as me. So that's my dad. And as people who have been here for a while know, my dad has been into the occult over the years. He's really into animals. He is the person that I backed the arcane bullshit oracle with, so we both have a copy of that. And whilst he doesn't read his own tarot cards, he definitely has in the past, or he's had them read. I think he has a 𝗨 tarot, or had a 𝗨, I don't know. But in terms of like just the feeling that whilst it's not mainly animals that are native to us, there's so much that he would enjoy in this that I enjoy. There's so much animal inclusivity. There is so many like insects, like I'm trying to think of the other names because not everything falls under insects, but just to save time, insects, arachnids, what else do I want to chuck in there? Invertebrates. They might, like I said, my brain is not working properly today, so does that fall under insects? I don't know. You get my drift. Like there is a lot. It's not just your standard tarot animals, which I love animal decks, but they do get a little samey sometimes. I love the creepy crawly variety in this. These are such great questions. You should upload it to YouTube. Oh, thank you. I will definitely try. Hopefully Instagram doesn't go weird on me, but it hasn't for a while, so fingers crossed. yeah, it's just that animal diversity or inclusion or whatever you want to call it. And I love that. And my dad is an animal nerd. He is also someone who has a lot of animal reference books, whether that is identification ones, whether that's deep dives into a particular species, or whether it's animal encyclopedias. It's something that we are both very into. So I would definitely gift him a copy of this. If I could. Not while I'm moving, I can't, and he would probably just have it sitting there on the side. But the sentiment is there. I should show it to him one day, actually. And thinking of that, whilst it might not seem like it, the Arcane Bullshit Oracle is a great deck to pair with this. I have paired it together. If you scroll back through my Instagram, they're a great pairing. Can't say more about them. So the next question I've got, let's have a look. I'm trying to look through my list. This might wobble a second. I've got the computer next to me with the list. Okay, most favourite and least favourite card, and of course why. This was really, really hard. And I picked 2. So then you're going to be like, how was it really hard, Tegan? But it was. It just was. The reason I picked 2 is it just happened naturally, basically. And also I didn't really want to single one out when picking my least favourite. Also, it's really a soft least favourite. There is not one card in this deck that I actually dislike. And I usually say to people, oh, there's always a card that you don't really like. And I need to stop saying that because, firstly, I don't usually say such sweep away generic comments. And secondly, it's not true because there isn't a card that I don't like in the Brady Tarot. I'm genuinely not lying. I find it to just be a fucking astounding deck. I really love it and I must review it at some point, I know. But let's do the least favourite first and then why. The Temperance one is just one that never gripped me as much as all of the other cards. I really like the animal inclusions, especially when I think about some of the folklore behind aspects of this. And this gorgeous, perhaps I want to say willow tree, it gives me willow vibes, which is one of my favourite trees ever, by the by. But it's a very familiar Temperance card. There is a Temperance card in the Wildwood Tarot that has 2 dragons going round, I don't know, like a tower spire or something like that. It's a depiction that I have seen before. It's stunning, it's beautiful, it's just it doesn't knock my breath away in the same, believe it or not, she says breathless, in the same way that the rest of the stuff does. Hello, Logan. Hello to everyone else as well. That's very rude of me, but Logan put hearts. So I only say hello to people that talk because people come in and out and otherwise I would be just constantly saying hello. And then the Hierophant card, and again, the detailing, and I just love birds of prey or falcons, not falcons, raptors. I don't know if this is a falcon, I can't remember. The book does say the animals and the symbology though. It's such a good book. Speaking of books, the reason that this is perhaps one of my less favoured cards is because it's more of a human one. You do get the occasional thing like arrows and stuff in this deck, for the most part is very animal. And the only other real presence is there's some cultural inclusions. I don't think it's a totem pole, but there's something that I'm not going to do justice that again is spoken about in the book. There's some inclusions like that. And the impact of humans is definitely remarked upon in some of the cards. like the polar bear that's wounded and it's on melting ice. Very human impacts. But in terms of like human material objects, they tend mostly away from that, which is something that I really enjoy about the deck. I actually really love this book. I think it's cute. I love all the inclusions and the symbols, but it's just a more human facet. So, and like I said, because I don't actually have a least favourite in like a strong way, this was all I could come up with. And then two of my favouriteest cards ever. I love the Strength card. The Strength card is a card that I identify with hugely as an archetype. It is also, you know, when you do all of the card things, like, especially when you start out with tarot, or you come back to tarot and you study as an adult perhaps, or whatever your journey is, and you do like, what's my life path card, and what card represents my star sign, and things like that. And for both of those, I think there may even be 3 of those in total, but anyway, for all of them, my card is Strength, which, yeah, I definitely associate Leo with it. I'm really glad it's an 8. I am not worried when decks have it as an 11, but I have a bit of an affiliation with the number 8 as well as a couple of other numbers as well. And this depiction is just, the mama bear energy is so fierce and protective, but it's a different kind of protective. It's not aggression for the sake of aggression, if that makes sense. And she's not actually done anything yet, although look, rattlesnake wrapped around her legs, not ideal. Like, she is giving don't fuck with me vibes. And yet there is a vulnerability and an embodiment, just a raw energy in this card. It gives me so many feels. In fact, I could have kept this one as well for a card that makes me feel emotional. So I'll add it in as that card as well, because it really does. Like, it gives me, this is the mum that you know, like, we don't always get the people that we want in terms of ideals. Life happens, humans are human, but yes, please. And normally I don't gender the cards, but I know this is a mother bear. Like, she's got all of her nipples. You can tell if you've ever seen an animal that's like pregnant, or they've just had like babies and they're feeding them, or what's the word I want? My parents' dog's doing it at the moment, like a faux pregnancy. I can't think of the term. We're just going to roll on past it, but a phantom, that's it. And all of her nipples have gone swollen up and she's just not a happy bunny, bless her. Yeah, so, and my other favourite card, as well as another one, but this is for another question. I cannot with this card. There is just, I mean, I am into cat energy. Big cats have been one of my, and small cats. Cats have just been one of my favourite animals since I was born. I was basically born a crazy cat lady. I was born into a house of 9 cats from birth. Several of them were my guardians. We have lots of pictures depicting and backing this up, but they would sit out of reach because otherwise I would grab them and pull on them because I was a baby. And the big cat energy has just consisted through my entire life. There is only one period of time for 1.5 to 2 years where I didn't own a cat, and that is the first time I lived on my own and I wasn't allowed one. I had pet rats, and don't ask me how I got away with that. It's a whole story, but I cannot be without cats anyway. But this depiction is beautiful and gives me a really full-bodied reflection of the Mother of Arrows. Like, this is the swords, by the way, and that's another, they don't ask like what the strong point of the deck is, and one of the strong points of this deck is that the elements are colour-coded and different shapes and patterns around the edges. The Wands and Pentacles, so Earth and Fire, are a little bit more similar, as you can see, but you can tell the difference. The red is darker and has got more of a point to the shapes. I think I would have made them a little bit more different, but anyway. So this really cold colour is the Air suit. And the Mother of Swords, the Queen of Swords is just done dirty far too often, as far as I'm concerned. I don't enjoy it. Yes, there is something that can be quite cutting and confronting and challenging and boundaried about the sword suit and the suit of communication and intellect. But I feel like a lot of some of the ways that it's discussed they maybe veer towards the unhelpful or the negative far more than being able to see some of the positives or even the neutrals in the suit. And I feel like that's more of a representation of how humans struggle with communication, especially nowadays, like with the internet and our short attention spans and other things, and not seeing people as much, and then a pandemic, and I mean, my gosh, just silly working hours, not enough time to live and engage with people. And also boundaries, they're hard, they're challenging, and I think that a lot of people struggle with boundaries, and therefore they don't see the love or the nourishment or the necessity from those types of communications. And so it's like, it's cold and it's this and it's that. And yes, it can be, in the same way that the Pentacles can be totally out of alignment. So in the same way that if we're really, really emotional to the point of not being able to sort of contain anything within ourselves, or not being able to sort of like tether ourselves, then that can be difficult to be around or to hold as well. So I feel like the sword suit gets kind of a bit of a bad rap as a whole, and this is an epic depiction. So good. When you take the people out of things. And then this one is favourite animal that's represented. I mean, we've had the cat. It had to be the fox. I love foxes, especially red foxes, because red foxes are our native foxes. I am obsessed with foxes. I love them. So, another swords card. I am digging the fact that the swords cults are animals that I really enjoy. I'm sure one of them's like a turkey vulture or some kind of vulture. I can't remember the other one, but there's really just solid animals across the board, especially for that suit. So yeah. What is there to say? I mean, look at them. They're going for it. Their eyes. It's fabulous. So, I've said a few things that set the deck apart, and this has been going for nearly an hour now. So there were other questions, but I think I'm just going to round it up with, there was one of the ones in particular was draw 3 random cards. So I'm legitimately going to shuffle. I will try and do it in front of you. Nah. And that's what happens. Right, we try that again, shall we? And it is, I've not heard it said this way, but I think that it's probably to make it just a tiny bit nicer. But this is a game that we used to play a lot when I was younger, definitely in my teens. This particular version of it is called Bed, Wed and Behead. What did we call it? Kiss, Marry, Murder, I think was the one. So, kiss would be bed, marry would be wed. So basically lust, actual love, long-term connection, and then just someone that you cannot deal with. That needs to be gone. I'm not going to be able to do this in front, so you just have to listen to me shuffle. I'm too sore. I'm having to box still. We've had very little help so far. Have we had any? I've said little. I don't think we've had any. So yeah, it's just me and my partner. So So first, who are we going to bed? Bit weird because they're animals, but we're going with the energy, not the animals. Okay. I could probably bring the animals into it in a non-human, not a sexual capacity. Wed, who's our betrothed? Our betrothed is going to be celebration. It's getting better, isn't it? Success is nice. Celebrate. I don't know, actually. I think I would rather success, but celebration is, you can celebrate no matter whether you're successful or not, so I suppose it's actually the better way around. Is it terrible that I'm like, I love geese. I think they're geese anyway. You watch, I'm going to read and they're going to be swans. They don't look like geese that are around here, or perhaps they're neither. And like I said, I'm actually going to check the book for that one. But like, I'm into the first animal. And then who are we going to behead? Poor fucker. The cards, this is what happens. They get like sticky. Yeah. Look at the devil close. He's on full show, just in case you hadn't noticed. And now you'll never unsee it. Brilliant. It would have been really funny if he had come up for bed though. Just disgustingly funny, but funny all the same. Now, give me a moment, because I really, really want to remember what the damn animals are. Oh yeah, geese. Snow geese. I'm fine. They are geese. I got it right. Oh, and I should probably check, because I can't remember if that's a coyote or something else. So, feathers. Feathers are in here somewhere. They're not roots, not arrows. Clearly I'm fantastic at looking for things quickly, just in case people were getting bored. Coyote. Right again. Goat. I mean, goat's the main feature of this. Obviously, there's other animals in all of these cards, because I say all of them. This was the coyote's kill. I think it's just geese in this one. Just geese everywhere. So, bed. We got the Two of Wands, success. And I think it's definitely, there's something about it that, like I said, I would love to constantly have success, but firstly, it's in the eye of the beholder. Secondly, would it feel like success if it was constant? This would probably work really funny with people cards. So I'm having to be sort of, I bet people had a lot of silly fun with this if they used people-y cards. But anyway, I still enjoy it. I think for me, conceptually, yes, success doesn't have the longevity that I might have initially thought, oh, that was, that's kind of tasty. I like the idea of success. That's yummy. And that has that lusty lure to it. So actually, it's massively apt. And also, when I think of the Two of Wands and the concept of gathering our energy and our intent and our willpower and our drive together and conceiving this moment, and it's aha, and you look out and you have a direction suddenly. It's quite early in the fruition stage of that, in a element where the drive will compel you to want more. That's kind of my feeling of this card. So, yeah, that makes sense for bed. And then wed, we got the Three of Cups, which is hilarious. I'm not a Three of Cups person, in that I really like this because it's the geese, and geese do tend to like hang out in big groups, even though they pair off. Like every time I see geese, they're always in big groups, no matter whether they are grey lag, no matter whether they're Canada geese. Like I haven't seen snow geese, I don't think. Yeah, they seem to have like larger social nets, so that makes sense for me, and I enjoy this. But I think the 3, in terms of the actual depiction of it, tends to not feel like it embodies the energy of the 3 enough. And it always makes me think of people drinking, and I don't drink alcohol. I haven't drunk alcohol for like, my gosh, you know when you get stuck on a year? So I've been saying 7 years for a while, so it's probably more like, how long have I been with my partner? Is it 11 years or 12? 11. I don't know, perhaps I haven't drunk alcohol for about 9 years, so it's not how I celebrate. But celebration can mean so many things, and when I think about celebration and the breadth that you can take it into, appreciation, celebrating each other, celebrating the small acts that you do, like the mornings when you're not feeling well and perhaps a partner offers to make you some toast for breakfast, or a friend messages and checks in on you when no one else has, or you go outside and take a big breath of fresh air and then suddenly a little, I don't know, metallic beetle walks past my feet and I just think, wow, nature is fucking awesome. Like there are so many ways to celebrate that are small and accessible, that are grand and glorious. And yes, that is something that I want to wed. That's something that celebration and gratitude and kind of sort of, and the rapture of those moments and how that feeds into us having more, I suppose, equilibrium in times of struggle and strife, and not in that, again, nice washy fashion. That is something that I want to harness and draw in and call upon often. And to have others celebrate me as well. Like, it's a nice fucking feeling. My stepmom and I are really, really big on positive reinforcement. We're always telling each other well done for even the smallest things. Or we ring each other up and say, I know for most people this comes easy, but for me this is, you know, we're both neurodivergent, so it's like, for other humans this is easy, but for me it's really hard. And then we tell ourselves, we want a gold star, we did really well, you know, doing this thing or whatever. And it's kind of a private joke, and we really celebrate each other. And I think that a lot of people around us kind of love it, and also a little bit occasionally like wish that they could do it perhaps. Or sometimes people say, oh, are you being sarcastic? And we're like, no, we just love telling each other well done. We pretend to give each other gold stars. Like, there's no sarcasm. It's just a nice feeling. Life is hard, like a lot. I say we should do it more often. Anyway, this is getting to an hour, so we got behead the devil. I mean, it's a shame. It's a shame, because there are some really fun parts to the devil. Some really fucking fun parts. Some indulgent, indulgent extremes that we just swim into and lose ourselves sometimes, but kind of the ones that we're just chosen, like, fuck it. And perhaps there is a part of it that's kind of good for us, but there's a lot of excuses, you know, that's the indulgence of it. Like when I've had a really hard week and then I do something indulgent, sometimes I don't need to. Sometimes it isn't part of self-care. Sometimes I'm just being indulgent and making a few excuses. But there is a bit of a payoff, as long as I don't get into like a weird cycle with it, which the devil definitely can bring those cyclical things up and start being a problem. But in terms of like in the moment, I will do a mild share, but I will not get into it too much. But as someone who has long-term health conditions and disability and pain and all of that stuff, I've had a lot of medical trauma genuine medical trauma over the years for a long portion of my lifetime, like going back a fucking long time. And it that and being around people in my family who had a lot of health anxiety as well put me into a place where I have a very difficult relationship with health and those kinds of things, especially because mine isn't the best. And so in terms of like unhelpful thought patterns, cycles, processes, things that I tell myself, stories I tell myself, emotional loops that I get into, and then how that fares even more so on my body. Also the relationship I have with my body physically, and again the things that I tell myself about it, and again not liking my physical appearance, and in far bigger ways than it may just sound, broadly sweeping over it in a public video. But I know that when I get very stressed and I have a lot going on, those things tend to come up anyway. So I think in terms of like devil being very present at the moment, that would make sense. And beheading it would be a great idea. It seems like a weird thing to end on, but I don't know. I don't want this to go on too much longer, to be honest. So yeah, what do we think of the backs of the cards? They're very cool, right? It has the 4 elements again. And another strong point of this deck, like I said with the elements, is that they are present on every single card. So it's not just the minors, it's the majors as well. Oh, how could I forget that? This is another one of my favourites. Yes. Look at that. I know people don't like spiders. I've already had that massively reinforced today, but I don't care. I respect phobias, but there are other things afoot in social media that have been irritating me today. This is in a weird order, which I really need to shuffle it now, but I got all of the minors out and I grouped them together because obviously one of the questions I chose was pick your favourites. Look at this. There's so much going on here. The snake, the bats, the eagle, the mountains. It's almost like they're split open. Oh, I love this as well. This is the Page of Pentacles, which is one of my identification cards. So I love it. I realised I may have to add another identification card in the mix, you know. If anyone's curious, my 2 main identifiers for a very long time, I don't pull them out of the deck. They're just, of all the cults, which I believe we have all of within us, 2 of the ones I identify with and I feel that others experience a lot about me is the Page of Pentacles and then the King of Cups. Especially the King of Cups is like the therapist to me. You know, like psychotherapist, the emotional container and explorer. But I think I'm going to have the Queen of Swords in there. I think it's time. I would, however, be really curious, and it probably spoils it a bit because I've said mine, but hopefully not. I am always super curious, if anyone even feels like sharing, what cult card they would associate me with. I appreciate you only get me online. Well, some of you know me really well, but it doesn't mean you can't play. I just think it's fun. I like to do it with other people. So yeah, but that's the Brady Tarot. I hope that this came across as a love note to it as well, because it is. I freaking love it. It's just the bomb. So that, as a reminder, was the #OneDeckGoneWild. It is all over YouTube, so check it out. Like I said, 2 of the people you can definitely see on their channel is Rose Honey Ritual and Peekaboo Rose. So shout out to both of them. And it is a glorious tag that you can do again and again and again with different decks. You can do it with decks you've known for a long time. You could potentially do it with a new deck to get to know it more. It's a very fun tag, and there are elements of it that you could get really deep, or there are elements that, like I said, you can just have fun with. It just really depends where you're at. I did a bit of everything, and like I said, in total they came up with 37 questions. I did around not even half of those. I think it was under, perhaps a third. So yeah, lots to dive into. Thank you for everyone who jumped in. There was a lot of you. I hope that you're okay, and yeah, you probably won't hear too much from me aside from in stories over the coming weeks, because it is actually my birthday on Saturday. I will be 35. And then I have like a hospital checkup. I then haven't got to see a new specialist because of something that happened during my surgery, and that's all in the time of moving. So it's busy, but yeah, here's this. Thank you, and I will see you when I see you. Bye.